Hello, everybody. I'm Joanne Haigh. We welcome our viewers and listeners in Barbados and around the world to another episode of Face It and Fix It on CBC TV 8, CBC Barbados Facebook and YouTube, and of course, Q100.7 FM radio. Now, I just want to share a few thoughts and things that are on my mind, and one in particular is a disturbing video that is being circulated, as usual, social media. The video shows a man on the ground outside of what appears to be, or said to be, the accident and emergency hospital. But what is disturbing to me is not so much the gentleman on the ground. What is disturbing to me is the individual behind the phone who just decides to take out a phone and video that and not maybe lend some assistance. The video went on to say that they asked a nurse and the nurse did not come. What we do not know is how long was he on the ground and how soon did the nurse come. And I think you need to get the facts first before we share things like that and jump to conclusions. And it's sad because people were jumping to the wrong conclusion and assumed the worst. But it just leads me to wonder, if something is happening to somebody, what do we do? Do we help them, or do we take out our phone and video them instead of assisting them? And that is something that is very, very disturbing to me. In addition to that, we're also sharing fake news, and eventually, very soon, we'll be having a show on how do we spot fake news and why do we spread it. So today we have a very interesting show, as always. We have specialist emergency physician and head of home isolation facilities, Dr. Brian Charles, no stranger to the show. He enlightens us on the efficacy of mixing vaccines. As you know, we're ready to have the boosters, and the green light has been given to mix the vaccines. So we want to discuss that with him. We also have, again, another person who's no stranger to the show, Consultant Manager of Home Quarantine and member of the Isolation and Home Quarantine Committee, Dr. Adana Grandison. She has a special presentation for us, and I'm asking you, I'm begging you, you don't want to miss this, so please do not change that channel on your TV. You don't want to miss this. Of course, we will be giving away oximeters to our contributors or people who actually bring solutions, and if we think that your solutions they're all important and they all are good, but we obviously don't have 1,000,001, so we're going to give some oximeters to what we think will maybe the best out of the lot. We encourage you to call the show 228-5563 or 228-5562, or send us a WhatsApp message 228-5562. And if you want to follow us on Facebook, type in CBC Barbados and you can leave your comments there. When we come back, Dr. Brian Charles. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. Before I introduce Brian Charles, I want to say good morning to my lovely daughter Sky. I promised I would give her a shout out because today we are going to get our booster. And I'm glad that we're getting it today. And before we get it, we're going to hear from Dr. Brian Charles because we understand that we can now mix the vaccines. And I know some people are on the fence about getting a third shot. So Dr. Charles is here to answer all of your questions, and hopefully you will make a decision based on what he says. Good morning, Dr. Charles.
Hello, good morning, Joanne. Good morning, Barbados. Hi.
Nice to see you again. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. Happy to be on this show to just talk about vaccines and talk about COVID in general. Let's do the right things. Yeah.
Well, I'm a parent. Everybody knows that. And I'm curious, and I think you know this. I've been on the fence, not about getting a booster. It is important to get a booster. But now we're hearing we can mix boosters. And I can tell you based on some of the reading I did last night, people have had Astra, Pfizer, even for the second shot. Astra for the first, Pfizer for the second, because it appears, based on the science, the efficacy is much higher. Now, Barbados just joined in and decided only, I think it was day before, we got the green light to mix these vaccines. A lot of hesitancy out there just alone to get a vaccine. Now, let alone now you're saying, wait, we can mix. What can you tell persons watching now who haven't received their booster, like me, because I'm going today? What do we know, and should we be worried about mixing?
So the first thing is that we need to remember what a vaccine is. And a vaccine is something that is injected into the body so that the body can then mount a response against a foreign agent so that a serious disease or serious effect of a disease does not occur. And vaccine technology is not new. The boosters, now several illnesses require vaccination and vaccine boosters. And the reason for the vaccine boosters is that over time, usually the defense or the immune response against the foreign agent to which the vaccine has been administered decreases. And that is a phenomenon called waning immunity. So we get the vaccine, we boost our immune system, we fight whatever is foreign. But as time goes by, the ability to fight and to mount a very good response decreases. Now, so that we can produce more and a better response, you are then offered a booster, what's called a booster. And when the booster is introduced into the body, the immune response then now heightens up. And as it heightens up, you are then allowed to fight whatever the foreign agent is for a longer period of time and fight it better. So that is the technology and the science behind boosters. Now, one thing I would like to say is that just because boosters are being advised and offered does not mean that the vaccine doesn't work, because this is vaccine technology. You need for several diseases boosters. And just to give a few, chickenpox vaccine, you have to do a booster. Measles, you have to do a booster. Hepatitis, even tetanus, all of those diseases that we have good vaccination and immunization for, we use boosters. So it is no different from COVID. And I remember saying this on this show several months ago, that it is very likely with time, as we study how the disease is progressing and how the vaccination program is progressing, it is likely that we will need boosters to sort of top up the immune system. So that's the first thing I wanted to make very clear, that boosters doesn't mean that the vaccine has failed or is failing. It is part of the technology and the science behind vaccinations. The second thing is more peculiar and more specific to COVID now. In July, studies have shown that the efficacy of the humoral response to the vaccination, which is the antibody production, will start to slow down and decrease after 6 months. And the studies out of the UK have shown that mixing a vaccine that is made of one type specifically with another type of vaccine can give a greater efficacy, which means it can give you an even more robust chance of fighting against COVID. Now, that doesn't mean to say that using the same type of vaccine for your booster is not going to give you a good response. It does give you a good response. It's just that mixing like for example, the AstraZeneca with the Pfizer gives you a slightly better and bigger advantage. So that's really what we all need to know about what's going on right now.
So if it gives you a better advantage and a bigger advantage, will the time frame of it lasting be the same, or we don't know yet because we're now in the process of boosting? And I'm not sure if all the countries started to boost. Well, the vaccine only started rolling out late last year in Europe, yes, in the UK. So pretty
Correct.
much people are boosting, let's just say around June, July, August, starting to boost 6 months.
Yes.
So we don't
Yes.
have any data, or do we have any data that after shot number 3, am I going to be looking at 4, 5, 6, you know?
Right. So 2 things I want to say, Joanna. It's very important that we make this distinction. A third dose of a vaccine is different from a booster dose. The third dose is used for persons who are immunocompromised to get them up to the level at which the rest of us would have gotten for 2 doses. Okay, so that's important because there's reference to a third dose and people are interchanging it with a booster dose. So a third dose is for persons who do not mount a very good response for the first 2, and we want to get them up to that level. A booster now happens when your immunity starts to decrease and you want to bring your immunity right back up. And the booster is for everyone. Because we are in this pandemic and with this COVID so soon, it's only been, not even 2 years yet. We do not know what happens with the immunity after the booster dose. But if it follows what happens with the immunity after all other diseases that we use vaccines for, it becomes longer and longer.
Can I get some clarification there, because I'm not quite understanding? Sure. A third dose of, let's just say, AstraZeneca, and a booster of AstraZeneca, isn't it the same medicine? Isn't it the same vaccine? Identical.
Same vaccine.
But what you're saying is that the reason sometimes for giving it differs, but it's the same, because there's some people who were asking me, is the booster something different to what I had before in terms of the made up, the materials, the ingredients of the vaccine? It's the exact same vaccine that you had given a third time, but it varies for the reason behind giving the third. One is a booster which everybody can have, and the third shot sometimes is given because you didn't
you have not mounted a good response with the second.
For the second, so you may then get. All right, so continue. I just wanted to make sure that we were all clear on that. Continue.
Right, that's very, very, very important. So because we have not been here long enough in terms of the vaccines, we do not know how long the immunity will last. And similar to other vaccines that need boosters for them to top up. Now, I drew reference to this before in terms of tetanus. We need a tetanus booster every 10 years because the efficacy of the injection, the immunization that we get from tetanus seems to decrease after 10 years. So we do not know what is going to happen with COVID. We may need a booster every 6 months. We may need a booster every year. We may need a booster every 5 years, or we may not need another booster after the booster that we're getting now. So it's all very new, and I know people are skeptical. They're saying, you wanted me to take this vaccine. We've taken the vaccine. We've taken 2 doses, and you said it was good and it was effective. But now you're telling me that I've got to take another one? What are you saying? Does it mean that it wasn't effective? So it's not that. It's just that the natural way the immune system works is that the effectiveness decreases over time.
All right, so let's talk about actual mixing now. I can tell you I am or was skeptical. I'm not about the booster. I just wanted information about which one to take. And I can tell you, a lot of people, including my daughter in England, who's about to get her booster, she had AstraZeneca 1 and 2, and she's being boosted with Pfizer. And I was like terrified. I was like, you sure? Are you sure? She's like, yeah, Mom, this is what they're doing in England. It gives us better coverage. In Barbados recently, GIS put out a notice stating that you're now allowed, to choose whatever booster you want. For those of us who are wondering, okay, what do I do? I don't want some side effects. I already had a good run with AstraZeneca 1 and 2. Should I go there and take Pfizer? I'm not sure how my body is going to respond. What do we say to those people who are concerned about that?
Right. So as with all vaccinations and anything that you put into your body, Panadol, aspirin, Advil, whatever, there's a likelihood of side effects. But vaccines are special because the side effects that we see indicates that the vaccine is working, because that is how it works. It boosts the immune system, and for the immune system to be heightened, it shows us that they're fighting something. And what you see, like with fever and sore arm and bad feels, and sometimes you really can feel lethargic, and actually some people feel ill, is when the vaccine is working. So people call it side effects. I like to say it's just a reaction to how it works. Now, if you've had side effects to one type of vaccine, it is very likely that you will still get another side effect to any other type of vaccine, because that's how it works. The difference is the magnitude of the effects that you get. Persons are asking very frequently, what effects will I get? And I have to be honest, we don't know. There's some people that get very little effects, and there are other people that are sick for a day. And then there's some people who get effects from one type of vaccine and no effects from the other, and some people get effects from both of them. Now, if you know that you've had very little effects from one, for example, let's for argument's sake say you've had no effects from the AstraZeneca, and you are now considering getting a booster, then you may be safer to say, well, look, I think I'm going to get the AstraZeneca booster. The AstraZeneca booster is not going to put you at a disadvantage. It still works very well as a booster. But switching to another type of vaccine like the Pfizer will give you a slightly better, protection, but it is not going to make you at a disadvantage if you use the same type. So my advice to persons who are asking these questions is to consider it very carefully. Taking no booster at all puts you at risk because your immunity is getting less and less. So then what choice? If you get a very, very bad reaction to one, then it's likely that you will still get another reaction to the other vaccine. So choose the mix and match, what we call mix and match. And if you have had no reaction to the first one and you don't want the unpleasantness at all or the risk of the mixing with the second one, then stick with the first one that you've had.
Okay, so we're only hearing a lot about AstraZeneca and Pfizer, but we have other vaccines here. We have the Sinopharm, and people have taken the Sinopharm. And I've said before, and I'll say it again, I didn't get the Sinopharm. It wasn't available when I got vaccinated, but I was betting on the Chinese. I figured it came out of China, who best to bring a vaccine, and apparently with the makeup of the Sinopharm is actually very effective. But people are asking, no, if I had Sinopharm, can I get a Pfizer? Can I get an AstraZeneca? Because we only hearing about AstraZeneca and Pfizer, the combination of the two. But we can't discount and leave out the other vaccine that we have.
Very true. So let me break this down very simply. Currently, there are two types of vaccines being used. Two types, not two brands, two types. AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, and Sinopharm all are of the same type.
We have Johnson & Johnson here, by the way.
Yes, we do. Yes,
oh,
we do.
Sorry. Well, that person who, forgive me, I was arguing this morning before the show. It's not here. They said, yes, it's here. I was like, no, J&J is not here, but it is. Yeah. All right, good.
Yeah, it is here. Not very many. It is here, and you can get it if you request.
Okay. Now, sorry. Carry on.
No, sorry, the three of them are of one type, and this is called the adenovector type, right? That's just a big word for the mechanism by which they are taking the spike protein from the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, and attach it to a medium that can be transported and stored and injected by using an adenovirus. So those three are called adenovector type vaccines. The mRNA vaccines, on the other hand, which is the Pfizer and the Moderna, they use a different technology. What they're doing is that they take the messenger or the blueprint of the virus, like protein of the virus, and they encapsulate it. They surround it by a layer of fat and put it into a medium so that it can be injected into our bodies. So there are two types, the adenovector and the mRNA. The studies have shown that if you mix the adenovector with the mRNA, the effect after the booster is higher than if you boost with both mRNA or if you boost with the adenovector. So this is why the Sinopharm, if you have had Sinopharm, then a good choice would be the Pfizer. If you have had Pfizer before, 2 doses of Pfizer, and you want to boost, then a good choice would be AstraZeneca or Sinopharm or the J&J. So the mixing and match is what's being advocated right now because of a slightly higher efficacy and long-term immunity that is likely from the mixing and matching.
All right. We have a question quickly, but and I want to get that there. A person's asking how soon before travel. Is it safe to take the booster days before travel for fear of blood clotting?
So can I answer that really, really quickly?
Yes.
The fear of clotting is very minuscule with all the vaccines. It should not be used as a decision not to take the vaccine because COVID itself causes more clotting if you catch the disease than the
vaccines. And
yes,
no more clotting than that of the pill.
Of the pill, or smoking, or pregnancy. And I don't see us saying that we're going to stop taking the pill or we're going to stop getting pregnant because of, or we're going to stop smoking because of clotting. You know, so it's not a risk that needs to be fearful about. Yes, it does happen, but it happens very, very infrequently.
But so catching COVID is definitely a risk because to people who actually suffer from blood clotting, for example, thrombosis and different things. And this is to a young lady, mature woman who's listening to me right now, who has problems with her veins and refuses to vaccinate. And she says that, you know, they hurt and they give her trouble. And I'm trying to say, look, COVID is, you should not be catching COVID. You know, you need a vaccine. Then if you have problems with the veins, just talk to her in the screen and people who are like her right now, who seem to feel that veins and varicose veins is a ticket not to get vaccinated.
Right. No,
quite the opposite.
And interestingly, it's opposite. And interestingly, I've heard people with things like purpura, easy bruising, and there was another lady who got ulcers from venous stasis, and says, I'm not getting the vaccine because it's related to clots. The vaccine will make me clot more. And I'd like to reassure the public that the risk of COVID, and especially if you have vulnerabilities, the risk of COVID is far higher than the risk of getting vaccinated for with those conditions that you have. So we do have to remember that though many of us will not get serious illness, persons with vulnerabilities can get serious illness and die, and we have many of these people with vulnerabilities in our population. So even if we think that we're not going to get ill, the responsible thing to do is to be your brother's keeper, take care of granny and auntie and the elderly at home and persons with diabetes and hypertension and asthma. You know, take care of those persons by you doing something to help them.
And another quick question, you talk about the two types of vaccines, but in America, they only use the NMR, what's it called, the mRNA or vaccine?
Yes.
The Pfizer and the Moderna and the Johnson & Johnson. What are they doing for a booster? seeing that the efficacy to
They're
combine the two, they don't really have a lot to combine with like how we do. What are they
correct,
doing for a booster
right? They're boosting with the same mRNA
in
type
America?
vaccines. Yes, yeah, that's right.
All three, if you're Pfizer, you go Pfizer right through Moderna. So does it make sense to do Moderna Pfizer if you're in America right now and people in the diaspora listening to you?
It doesn't really make any difference because they're the same technology. So if you have mRNA and mRNA, I've heard people getting Pfizer and Moderna first and second, and it's the same technology, so it's not going to make that much of a difference. And for those who are listening in the UK side, the UK has advocated since July, August, because that's when the studies first started to show the waning, that they use like your daughter has said, they use the Pfizer as a booster shot because of the increased efficacy.
Do we have any evidence of breakthroughs with the booster, or nothing documented that you can share with us as yet, worldwide?
It's very early. It's very early days, and I haven't seen any evidence of post-boosting breakthrough. But I would expect it. The vaccines and boosters don't prevent infection. We've always said that they prevent severe illness and dying, and they will be. It does not remove the non-communicable diseases or the vulnerability. So it is very possible that after boosting, even after boosting, that you will get some people who will get ill and possibly die.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with Dr. Adana Grandison, but she's going to join Dr. Charles for a short period because he has to go. We'll be back after the break.
Thank you.
Back to Face It and Fix It. If you're now joining us, we are speaking with Dr. Brian Charles, specialist CBC physician and head of home isolation facilities. And joining us now is Dr. Adana Grandison, consultant manager, home quarantine, and member of the Isolation Home Quarantine Committee. Good morning, Dr. Grandison. Thank you for joining us. I want to remind our viewers, listeners, if you want a quick word with Dr. Charles, it's 228-5563. He has to leave us in about 5 minutes. And Dr. Grandison is here also to do a very special presentation and when he leaves. Welcome, Dr. Grandison. Before the break, we were talking about mixing vaccines, and people are a little bit on the fence about the mixing. Do we have any evidence of any adverse, or should I say, anyone complaining of anything that we know of when they mixed the Pfizer with the AstraZeneca over the last few days? Is it
No,
the same in terms of side effects?
no adverse effects. The adverse effects would be those unwanted reactions, anaphylaxis, where the person has a severe allergic reaction, or any clotting or any inflammation of the heart, the carditis that can occur. That hasn't been reported as yet. You can have side effects, and as Dr. Charles stated, side effects are really a way of allowing you to know that your immune system is working. It has recognized that there's something foreign in the space, and it is now attacking that foreign entity. See it as almost like an examination, a booster dose. You've been taught the material, you should know the material, you've gotten your qualifications for the material, but now you're going back in 2 years later or a year later, or in our case, 6 months later, to say, do you still remember what I first taught you? Can you recognize it? And that is really what the booster dose is doing. If you can recognize it, certainly you will respond quite quickly. You wouldn't waste any time. You'll write down all your answers on the piece of paper, and you're handing your paper and walk out of the exam. This is essentially what a booster dose is. Persons can have things, as Dr. Brian Charles said.
But this is where I mixed up though. If I'm doing a jolting my memory, when I have to jolt my memory with the same question, which means if I'm jolting my memory and my system, you giving me I've got another booster. Even though the makeup is different, but the impact is the same. So with the memory of boosting with a Pfizer, if you had AstraZeneca, be waking up my memory on the inside as well? Or is it Pfizer going to be teaching me something new?
No, because remember, it's just different ways of alerting you to the spike protein.
Okay.
And I'll talk about the importance of the spike and why all of the vaccines, no matter what modality they use to essentially prime your immune system to the spike, it's really showing the body, here's a spike. Do you remember what the spike is? And why do we need to get spike out of circulation? So it's really not a problem if you are now taking, for instance, Pfizer after the AstraZeneca, because your immune system is still recognizing spike protein. And spike protein is something that is on the outside of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which we don't want the body accepting and allowing it to replicate. So therefore, as soon as it comes into the space, we kill it.
All right, so here's my next question, and Adana Grandison can answer, Dr. Grandison, or probably Dr. Charles. Persons who took the Pfizer vaccine and now due for the second shot, can they go Astra? Or should they wait for the booster to be the mixing?
So I will take that. If they have had Pfizer 1 and 2 and 6 months have gone and they have the access to the AstraZeneca, then they should get the AstraZeneca. Because the reverse, so the
but that's the reverse, that's why I'm asking, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. The studies have shown,
but I'm talking about Pfizer 1, I haven't gotten my second shot yet. Can I do Astra 2?
Oh, no. The first 2 should be. So the regime is exactly how it was prescribed before, which is 2 AZ, 2 AstraZenecas, 2 Pfizers, 2 Moderna, 1 Johnson & Johnson, 2 Sinopharm, right? And then the booster now. So remember, fully vaccinated does not consider the mix, or we have not had that definition that fully vaccinated is the mix. Where the mix and match has come is when you want to boost the immune system when there is a waning immunity. So I hope that is very clear. So we're not advising to go and mix it before you're fully vaccinated.
Let's just mention fully vaccinated. We know that we have some safe zones, and it speaks about being fully vaccinated, but now we're hearing a booster. When am I fully vaccinated in medical terms? But 2 or the booster? Because the booster is still a choice. Well, vaccinating is a choice, period. When, according to doctors, when are we actually fully vaccinated? Not from the legal sense, but from the medical sense.
Right. By definition, fully vaccinated is at completion of a course of recommended vaccinations plus 2 weeks. So AstraZeneca plus 2 doses plus 2 weeks. Moderna and Pfizer plus 2 weeks. Johnson & Johnson, which is a single dose, plus 2 weeks. Boosting is something different. So you can be fully vaccinated and still need a booster 6 months down the line. So this is why we're saying, so even if you have 6 months after you're fully vaccinated, it doesn't mean that you're no longer fully vaccinated. You were fully vaccinated before, but we are now boosting your immunity so that your immunity can respond better to that foreign agent that comes into the space, as Dr. Grandison has said.
So how long do we have after we boost? Because remember, with the first dose, we talk about 2 weeks afterwards, and then the second dose, we talk about the efficacy building. The booster now, is that like a week, 2 weeks? How, anybody knows?
You're still fully vaccinated. The booster heightens the response. It heightens the response. What we don't know now is that after the booster, how long does that immunity last?
Which we don't know as yet.
For example, yes, we don't know that as yet. We know, like for tetanus, we see, and I always give this example because it's very common. 10 years, by 10 years, you're beginning to wane. But for now, with the boosters, we don't know how long I
want to take a call quickly before you go, Dr. Charles, if you don't mind. Caller, good morning. Face it and fix it. You're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. Are you hearing me?
Loud and clear.
Yes, I was just wanting to ask a question on behalf of someone who had their vaccine a few days ago, and the person is menopausal. Haven't had a period for about 2 years, and now a few days after taking the vaccine, they're having not just spotting but heavy bleeding.
Okay, I smile at the menopause bit because it's my favorite subject. Because I always say going through a pandemic and you're menopausal is not a good experience. But Dr. Charles, I do know there are some people who took Pfizer and it took 2 months before the period came back, and those are young girls, and that can happen.
Yes. So there has been an association with menstrual irregularities and some of the vaccinations, especially it seems to be more concentrated towards the mRNA, so the Pfizer and the Moderna. We have had some studies that has shown that, and it's not only shown for delay in this menstrual cycle, but also heavier and more unusual cycles after the Pfizer. However, it is self-limiting. So I do expect that persons who are menopausal and perimenopausal, who already have some degree of irregularity, that it could cause a bit of concern. If you are alarmed and you think you need it to be addressed, you should speak to your gynecologist. Having said that, it should just go away usually within one cycle after the vaccination.
Well, you know what? Also, too, I want to ask, because when you're going through menopause, those things are actually natural to happen. Heavy periods, especially when you're coming on to the end of it. You miss one or you miss a few, all of a sudden it comes back like, oh hell, So it's not unusual even without a vaccine to experience that. Yes?
Joanna, I wanted to really state here that really the definition for menopause is kind of a period for 1 full year. Now,
Right.
if that female has not had a menstrual cycle for 1 full year, and now she's getting that spotting or even that heavy bleeding, yes, it can occur, but certainly it is still something, and we don't know that it may even be necessarily linked to the vaccine. You may
Correct.
notice an association because it is happening at the time that you have been vaccinated. But as Dr. Charles said, I would strongly recommend that that person actually goes and they see their gynecologist to ensure that everything is okay.
Okay,
right.
Thanks. Dr. Charles, I know you have to go. Final words from you before you depart us?
Final words, let us try and get this pandemic in check. And I was thinking about this all morning when I was exercising. Let us not forget 3 things. Let us not forget our healthy lifestyle so that we can control the non-communicable diseases, the vulnerabilities that we have. Let us not forget the non-pharmacological methods, which is wearing the mask properly, frequent hand sanitizing, clean surfaces that you touch frequently, physical distancing so that we try not to spread it. And let us, for as much as we can, do the responsible thing after getting the correct information, which is the vaccination. The vaccine really is the only definite thing that we have against COVID. they all work in tandem. All of these three things that I just mentioned. The vaccine is COVID specific. The other things are also related to, the spread of respiratory diseases and such like. So I had appealed to, our communities, our society, families. Let's try to see if we can get back to normal living. Let us try and see if we can get these restrictions that we have removed. And I wish that we can all get there very soon. It really touches me every day that I look at the dashboard that we have so many people who are passing, and my condolences go out to all of them and their families, their loved ones, especially as the majority of these persons who are leaving us are persons who are unvaccinated. And it's not to say that we're hiding the figures. We're not hiding the figures. There is something out there that shows that the vaccine is protecting some people. So those are my last words. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Brian Charles. I know you were really busy, and we want to really thank you for taking the time to come out here and spend some minutes to talk to the public. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and have a good show.
Well, keep trying all the time. So, Dr. Grandison, it's just me and you, girl. So let's talk about this presentation that you're going to do. We're going to tell viewers and listeners it's going to be right throughout. We're going to take a few breaks, obviously, for commercials, but I'm hoping that you pay special attention, and I'll leave it to you now to tell us what this presentation is going to be about before you start. You're muted. Yeah.
So good morning again. Thank you so much for having me on this morning. And I really thought that it was important for, after having that conversation with you, and also after having conversations with many other groups, I thought it was important really to be able to speak about COVID in very simple terms. Quite often I know that as physicians we can often get carried away quite excitingly by medical jargon. I am also at fault for this at times, but I thought it was important really to explain the virus, SARS-CoV-2, behind COVID-19 disease. Dr. Brian Charles actually did quite a nice job on vaccines, so that part I know really don't have to do, but I'll touch on it briefly, and then also speak about variants and how they all interact with each other. So essentially, this virus reared its head back in December of 2019 in China, in Wuhan, China. How did it present? There were a group of doctors who would have noticed that there was something different in terms of how patients were presenting to the hospital at that point in time. Respiratory illness, yes, but is it behaving like something that they already know? Sort of, but not quite. And anytime that a physician notices something that the picture looks familiar, but it's not quite, we always have to think about what is the possibility of this being something else. And I think that that's really what triggered these physicians in Wuhan to really start to investigate, to blow the whistle and say, this is something, we've not seen this here before, and I think this here merits some investigation. So after investigating these patients who would have presented with this very atypical respiratory illness, they would have noticed that, yes, indeed, and in fact, it was something new. It was SARS-CoV-2. Now, certainly we know that SARS had been present already on that side of the world before, not SARS-CoV-2, but actually SARS-1, which everyone knows as SARS. And certainly this was now a concern for persons because this is now something new, something different. What do we know about it? How does it really present? What are the outcomes that can occur that can be negative? And so lots of investigation and research automatically flew into action. They were able, with the advances in technology that we have now, and this is not simply because of COVID coming on the scene. This is technology that back as far as 2005, 2006, I first came across some of this technology, genomic surveillance, and you can use genotyping, and we've been doing it in forensic fields, for instance, for quite some time. But they use essentially that technology to be able to decipher, and we also know about the Human Genome Project, to be able to look at DNA and certainly RNA to determine what is it actually we're dealing with on a molecular level. And so after doing that investigation, they were able to say, okay, it definitely does look like SARS in some ways, but it's also quite different. Now, this virus, SARS-CoV-2, belongs to a family of viruses. And I want you to think about it almost like the family name in Barbados, Brathwaite's. Every single Brathwaite may be different, but they all, or for the most part, they're all in some way related. Okay? Now, the coronaviruses is given its name simply because of how it looks. When you think about corona, you're thinking about a crown, and that is essentially how this virus looks. It has a sphere with some finger-like projections off of it, almost that looks like a crown. If you had to think about a king's crown or a princess's crown, okay? And we know about coronavirus already because it's also the virus that's associated with the common cold, one of the actual coronaviruses. So this particular family of viruses is already known in some regards, but now this very different and new one essentially turned upon the scene, almost like the new kid on the block. And it was of serious concern. Why? Now that we have great transportation, not simply from St. George to Christchurch, but you can hop on a plane and go to the US, the UK, you can go to China, you can go to Europe, you can go anywhere on the globe right now with great ease. This virus was like, okay, you know what? I am going to be a traveler. And that's exactly what happened. And so in March of 2020, WHO then declared, because of all the traveling that was occurring at the time and the very rapid spread of this virus across the globe, declared it as a pandemic. So what symptoms present with SARS-CoV-2 developing the disease COVID-19? Persons can experience some of the very mild symptoms. They can get fever, they can get sore throat, they can get, previously it was thought to have no runny nose or no congestion, but now we're seeing with Delta, persons can get that runny nose and congestion. Okay, you can also get more systemic symptoms. You can feel generally unwell. You can go on to have diarrhea, vomiting. And then there are the symptoms that we get very concerned about, and those are the respiratory, lower respiratory specific symptoms. That's the cough, that is the shortness of breath, difficulty breathing. And then certainly as the lower respiratory system is compromised, you can also go on to have other effects. For instance, patients losing consciousness, they've passed out, family members unable to really rouse them if they go to sleep, children sleeping a lot more than often, not passing as much urine in the nappy, mommy noticing that busybody that about the house, no longer a busybody, just simply drawing up all the time. These are the things we get very, very concerned about in terms of the symptoms that you can have from COVID-19 disease. And why is that? I like to see the nose, eyes, and mouth almost as your ports of entry. Okay? When you smile, when you talk, when you laugh, when you shout, when you sing, as you breathe in and out, this virus travels from one person to another person via respiratory droplets. What does that mean? Big fancy term for saying it goes on your golf balls and it takes flight into the air. Now, this virus is very tiny, but it goes onto those saliva droplets or respiratory droplets, and it is suspended temporarily in the air. Obviously, the bigger droplets fall quickly to the ground. The smaller droplets can travel a little further. And as some person within close contact with a person who has SARS-CoV-2, you can inhale some of those respiratory droplets that have been suspended. And where do they go? They go into the back of your nose. And in the back of your nose, there's nice, warm, humid environment that's nice and moist. And it allows for the multiplication, or what we call in medicine, the replication of this virus. Now, I like to see this virus essentially almost like a criminal. And I'll explain this to you. If you went into a store and you were walking around doing your daily shopping and you noticed that another person came into the store that you weren't too sure about, they looked a little odd, and the security obviously flagged them, and you noticed that this person essentially took up something that they should not have taken up. They did not go to the cashier to purchase it. Essentially what they did was to take this item, put it into the pants, and attempt to walk out. Now, the security officer has a job. The security officer is supposed to ensure that things are not taken from the store without purchasing them. And so this security officer would probably go up to the person and ask, certainly, sir, what's happening, ma'am, what's happening here, and detain that person. Now, this is very much like how our immune system works. Our immune system has within it what I like to call the bouncers of the body. Okay, these bouncers are there to protect your body, to keep it nice and safe. So that if, for instance, there's anything or any entity, whether it's a virus, a bacteria, fungi, anything foreign comes into that space, it will recognize that there's something here that's not too right, and it will attempt to either get it out of circulation completely or attempt to ward it off so that it cannot affect the rest of the body. That's how the immune system works. Now, in this situation, going back to that story of the security officer and that person who came into the store, this security officer has essentially now turned this person over to, let's say, the police force. The police officers, they come, they collect this guy or this lady, they take them to the station, put them in this interrogation room, and the police has a duty to find out who is this person. But this security, this criminal has no duty to actually inform the police of who they are. They could sit in the room and say, I have nothing to say, no comment. I need my lawyer. They don't have a duty to speak to you. They don't have to answer. They don't have to comply. Now, the police officers also have a duty, whether they wish to assist the police. They can get fingerprints. They can take pictures. They can do a myriad of things to help them to be able to identify who is this criminal. Now, your immune system does the exact same thing. When it is exposed to something foreign, it will go about the process of trying to sort and figure out who is this criminal, who is this non-self, what is this foreign entity that is now within my body that can potentially harm it. Okay? Now, during this process, the virus is sitting down there. It has, as I said, that nice sphere capsule, and it has these spike proteins. Think about your criminal almost like a tambourine ball. Barbadians can truly identify with a tambourine ball. It has nice sugar crystals on the outside, the tambourine flesh inside of those sugar crystals, and on the very center, if you're lucky, you can have a few seeds. Everyone knows what I'm talking about when you think about a tambourine ball. Now, if you got a tambourine ball, certainly, and I'm using a tambourine ball very specifically as an example, because if you got to purchase a tambourine ball and it had very little flesh, hardly any sugar, and just seeds, you would be very, very upset. I would be too, okay? Now, those sugar crystals on that tambourine ball can be likened to the spike protein on SARS-CoV-2. Now, what does this spike do? The spike protein acts like a key to get into the cell of your body. So your body has many cells within it, and the spike protein essentially uses its mechanism to be able to bind to the ACE2 receptor on our cell to gain entry in the cell. Why do they use it? Simply because the virus does not have the ability to replicate on its own. It doesn't have any machinery within itself. So who does it really need? It needs us. It needs us human beings to be able to continue its life cycle. So this tambourine ball, or virus as you would call it, has now entered your cell, has gone into the interrogation room, and is sitting there. There's a table, there are probably a few items in there, the police officer has left to go to check to see exactly who's this criminal, and the virus is in there making many copies of itself. Now, this police officer would have left one criminal in the room. And when it returns now to say, okay, John Brown, I know this is you. You're going to be charged with X, Y, Z. When they enter the room, they no longer see one criminal. They're now seeing 500,000 criminals sitting down looking at them. Now, in the average police station that may have 20 to 40 police officers, certainly 500,000 criminals will overrun your police station. So in true Bajan vernacular, every man brat for himself. This criminal now essentially breaks out of this interrogation room, escapes the police station, and is now on the loose, causing lots of harm to the space. The police officers cannot mount an adequate response simply because there are just too many. Even if you were able to detain some, there were certainly a lot more that would have been able to get free to get out. Now, within your cell, and you can liken your cell to the police station, to your home, to any place, you have a door where the person can enter, which is a normal way of getting into your house. You put a key in the door, you turn the door, you open the door. In your home, you may have a family room, a living room, a dining room, a kitchen, where you may have some nice little goodies, your pots and pans, things that can help you make stuff. And then you have your bedroom. And in your bedroom, you may have a safe, or you may have a particular drawer that you may keep all of your very important items in. Certainly, if you trust some person enough, you may allow them to come into your home, but not everyone is ever allowed to come into your bedroom. And certainly,
but let me just take a pin right there, because I don't want you to lose the train, because you got everybody into this scenario. But I got to take a quick break, and right now we're leaving it at the bedroom. When we come back, we're coming back to the bedroom. We'll be back.
Okay.